Matthew Evans sat alone in his silver Mercedes, tapping his thumb impatiently against the steering wheel. The air conditioner hummed, barely keeping the Kentucky heat at bay. At 78, retired and wealthy from a lifetime in finance, Matthew was used to life working in his favor. But that day, he found himself stranded with a flat tire, far from the comforts of his pristine mansion on the outskirts of town. After several failed attempts to call for roadside assistance, he sighed, resigned to waiting. Just as frustration began to bubble up, he spotted a figure approaching a young boy, maybe 13 or 14, in a faded t-shirt and worn-out sneakers. The boy's eyes narrowed as he assessed the car, then gave Matthew a polite nod. "Got a flat, sir?" he asked, his voice steady. Yes, I do," Matthew replied, feeling an odd mix of relief and unease. "No signal out here, so I can't call for help." The boy smiled. "I can help with that." Kneeling beside the car, he added, "My grandpa taught me how to change a tire last summer." "Do you have a spare?" Matthew gestured to the trunk, watching as the boy pulled out the necessary tools and got to work. His hands moved with quiet confidence, a skillfulness beyond his years. As Matthew stood there, a rare sense of humility crept in. He wanted to offer the boy something in return, but the young man hardly looked up, focused entirely on the task. Minutes later, the job was done. The boy wiped his hands on his jeans and stepped back. All done. Matthew pulled out his wallet and extended a few bills. "Here, take this. I appreciate your help." The boy took a step back, shaking his head. "Thank you, sir, but I don't need anything. Just happy to help." Stunned, Matthew stood there, money still in hand, as the boy turned and walked away. The interaction left him feeling something he couldn't quite define. Alone again, he slipped the money back into his wallet and drove off, but his mind kept drifting back to the boy. That evening, he sat in his lavish study, surrounded by books he rarely opened, a perfectly prepared dinner untouched beside him. He thought about the thousands of people he'd encountered: business partners, investors, employees. Every interaction had been transactional. There was always an expectation, a price. But this boy, this stranger, had helped him for no reason other than kindness. The next morning, unable to shake the encounter, Matthew set out to find him. He retraced his route, stopping at gas stations and diners, asking about a young boy with dusty hands and a confident smile. Finally, an older woman at a small cafe spoke up. "Sounds like you're talking about Elijah. That boy's always helping folks. Lives with his mama over in Harlan." Harlan. The town was an hour away, nestled in the foothills of the Appalachians. As Matthew drove, his mind swirled with questions. Who was this boy? What kind of family raised someone like that? When he arrived, the town was quiet, its streets lined with modest homes and small businesses. After asking around, he was directed to a small house on the edge of town. It was worn but tidy, the porch sagging slightly. Taking a deep breath, he knocked on the door. A woman in her early 40s answered, her sharp eyes scanning him with curiosity. "Morning. Sorry to bother you, but I believe I met your son yesterday." "Elijah? He helped me with a flat tire." Her expression softened. "That sounds like my Elijah. Always helping folks." "I wanted to thank him properly," Matthew said. "He wouldn't accept anything from me." She nodded. "He's out back. You're welcome to wait." Matthew stepped inside, taking in the modest but warm home. The furniture was old but well cared for. Family photos and hand-drawn pictures decorated the walls. It was a stark contrast to his own house: pristine, expensive, but cold. In the backyard, Elijah was repairing the fence. He looked up, surprised. "Hey, mister. What are you doing here?" Matthew smiled, feeling oddly nervous. "I wanted to thank you again. You helped me when I really needed it, and I couldn't stop thinking about it." Elijah shrugged. "It wasn't a big deal. To me, it was." Matthew hesitated. People don't usually help strangers without expecting something in return. Elijah tilted his head, puzzled. "I don't see it like that. If someone needs help, and I can do it, why wouldn't I?" Matthew was struck by the simplicity of his words. He glanced around the patched fence, the rusted swing set. This family didn't have much, yet they carried themselves with dignity and generosity. I'd like to do something for you and your family, Matthew said at last. Elijah straightened, his expression cautious. We're okay, mister. We don't need anything. It's not about need, Matthew insisted. It's about what's right. You helped me, and I'd like to return the favor. Before Elijah could answer, his mother called him inside for lunch. Then she turned to Matthew. Would you care to join us? It's nothing fancy, but you're welcome. Unused to such invitations, Matthew hesitated, then nodded. I'd like that. As they ate, Matthew really listened to their stories. Elijah spoke of school and his dream of becoming an engineer. His mother spoke of the community, of people looking out for each other. The warmth in that small kitchen was something Matthew hadn't felt in years. Driving home, an idea formed. The next morning, he made calls to contractors, suppliers, old colleagues. Within a week, trucks arrived at Elijah's house. The porch was rebuilt, the roof repaired, the swing set replaced. Inside, the walls were painted, floors polished, and the kitchen upgraded. At first, Elijah tried to help, but Matthew insisted, your job is to enjoy being a kid for a little while. Still, Elijah watched the workers closely, fascinated. One of the crew, noticing his curiosity, invited him to help measure planks. Soon, Elijah was asking questions about construction. Matthew watched with pride. The boy's energy reminded him of his own ambition before life had become a blur of boardrooms and stock portfolios. When the project was complete, neighbors gathered to admire the changes. Elijah's laughter filled the yard as he showed off the new swing set. His mother, holding a cup of iced tea, turned to Matthew. You've done more than fix a house. You've given us hope. Matthew nodded, voice soft. You reminded me what life is about. Family. Purpose. Connection. I should be thanking you. Elijah joined them on the porch, thoughtful. Mr. Matthew, I want to do something like this one day. I want to help people too. Matthew placed a hand on his shoulder. You already are. Your kindness set all of this in motion. Never lose that. As the sun set, they sat together, watching the sky turn gold. For the first time in years, Matthew felt truly content. And as he drove away, he knew this was just the beginning of something greater, not just for Elijah, but for himself as well.